Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is a Marion work session, Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, December 5th. First on our agenda this evening is a discussion on the cart sizes for the curbside collection services. Kim?
Good evening, Council. Tonight, I will introduce a very familiar face again, Jeff Phillips with SCS, who will be sharing tonight some of the discussion and direction regarding the recommendations for cart sizes. This is the next step in our timeline. We have a lot of information to share, so bear with us as we work through all of the findings that we had to help us make a recommendation to you. So Jeff.
Okay. Thanks, Kim. Good afternoon.
Welcome.
So thanks again for allowing us to provide an update on the transition from manual collection to automated collection. So first slide is just a summary of what we're planning to talk about, just a general update about where we're at with the project. And then we'll lead into, as Kim alluded to, some data that we use to lead to and help inform the idea of the cart selections for the different programs. And then we'll talk through some of the desired services that we would recommend go into a procurement for those carts and allow the vendor to perform those services. We'll briefly talk about the rollout schedule of the new services and next steps. Every time I come here, I think I'm going to show this slide because eventually we'll get off the first stage and into the next stage, but there's a lot of activity in each of these boxes. And like I said previously, there's about 84 different tasks for this project. So we're just showing you the highlights. And so we're currently in the December here, vehicle procurement, cart size, trying to figure out the different cart sizes that we think that we would recommend, service rates, understanding what the cost would be for the city to provide those services, and then working to identify grant applications to help pay for some education as well as some of the recycling carts. Then we move on, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but we'll talk the next few months will then be cart procurement, city ordinances, policies, ordinances, really getting into the weeds of how the nuts and bolts of the programs are going to work all the way through September, where vehicles are rolling out and carts are being delivered and services begin. Again, just an update, vehicles have been ordered. Sean got an update today, which is great to hear that vehicles are being made and they will be ordered or they will be delivered as promised. So that's good to kind of get that affirmation that things are going there. Communication and outreach, this is really important. We have several different audiences for this type of utility service. A campaign is being developed and will be rolled out January 1. It's really important to have consistent communication about the services. And part of that is we need to wrap our arms about what the services are going to be, what they're going to look like before we start to have those conversations with the public specific to the services that they're going to be receiving. As far as meetings, we've been meeting with staff on a weekly basis, if not more, to talk through the data that we've got and to discuss the different types of programs and services that would potentially work within the city of Marion, but then also take a look at what other communities are doing, again, to help inform the program recommendations here. As far as the data that we've looked at, again, we're not going to go into great length of detail, but I think it's important to talk about that the recommendations are based on the foundation of the data that's specific to the city of Marion. So we started off this program with doing some field observations, time motion studies. At the last bullet point here, you can see we plugged that all into a financial model to run some scenarios. More recently, there was a curbside collection survey that was performed and had almost 2,000 responses to that helps inform, basically that was, how do you participate in recycling? How do you participate in garbage? And looking forward. Collection crew did a week-long field observation, which helped informed how much extra garbage are customers setting out. So basically, really, this is what they said they did. What are they actually doing in the field? And so we marry those two up to have reality meet between the middle there. And then we use that information to also understand the amount of garbage that's being generated, as well as recycling that's being generated, and then push that into some what if scenarios. What is the future going to look like if we do change a program? What additional capacity might be necessary to accommodate customers? And then also we looked at 9 other communities, comparable communities, to see what types of programs they offer, what cart sizes, what cart colors, how often they bill. The list goes on for the different types of data that we have, which will be used later on in the program. But for tonight's purposes is primarily what type of cart sizes they were offering. So as a starting point, just so we're visualizing something similar. When we talk about carts, we're talking about the wheeled carts, and our graphic design team stole this from another community. We rebuilt it, but I really like the idea of small, medium, large, and extra large. Okay, so we can name these A, B, C, and D, whatever, but I think it's important to think of how much volume that each containers can hold. 32 to 35 gallons may not mean a lot to people, but when you talk about number of kitchen-sized bags, 13-gallon bags, how much would fit inside of these? So we go from 2 all the way up to 5+ for the different cart sizes that are generally used by communities for these types of programs. So this is a really busy graphic. This is probably taking several different Excel data points and 2 pages of our report, trying to marry it up all into one graphic. What this graphic is looking at is based on the survey data that we asked residents and had more than 2,000 respond to. How do you participate in garbage? How much do you set out on a weekly basis? Then marrying that up with the data that the collection crew did out in the field. We've identified, okay, this is what we consider a normal set out rate for customers within the city of Marion. So the very top left is saying, okay, for 46 to 48 gallons, 8 out of 10 customers, so slightly less than 8 out of 10 customers, in fact, it worked out to 77% of the customers would be serviced on a weekly basis if they had a 46 or 48 gallon cart. The reason we've got that slash there is I don't want to influence what type of cart vendor you would use. Each cart vendor has different sizes, so I'm just kind of genericizing 46 to 48 gallon cart. So that's a pretty big swath of the customer base. If we would use a 64 or 68 gallon cart, 9 out of 10 customers would be serviced by that size of cart, meaning they would not have to, on a regular basis, have to go and buy an extra sticker for extra garbage, because the volume that you're providing them is their normal set out rate. About only 1 out of 10 customers might need a larger cart or might need to pay for an extra tag more often than not to have that waste be collected. And so keep that in mind. So we're talking 8 out of 10 customers would be serviced by a 46, 48 gallon cart, and 9 out of 10 would be serviced by a 64 to 68 gallon cart. On the other side of the service, we're looking at recycling. So this is based on the survey results where we asked, okay, how often do you or who participates in recycling? 98% of the survey respondents indicated that they do participate in the recycling program. We also asked, well, how much do you set out on a weekly basis on average? So 25% said about 18 gallons or less. 56% said 32 gallons or less. And then we start to trail off. 16% said, hey, I set out more than 64 gallons. When we generalize that down to the bottom of the slide, about 81% of the customer base sets out 32 gallons or less of recycling per week. Or 97%, if I include or 97% sets out 64 gallons or less per week of recycling. As a caveat to this, you'll see the recommendations in a bit. We strongly recommend that you make sure that when you're changing the program to an 18-gallon bin and you're giving people more capacity for recycling, it's been our experience that communities see a 95, if not more % increase in the volume of recyclables that they collect. So it's a really big change from manual collection to automated collection. And now you potentially are giving them additional capacity. They will use it. At least that's our experience in working with other communities. So if I said a majority of your customers are going to be serviced by a 32-gallon bin, I wouldn't likely recommend you use a 32-gallon bin, because I'm assuming when you make the transition, there's going to be more materials captured from their garbage and it's going to go into the recycling bin, meaning they might be throwing away recyclable materials now because they don't feel that they've got that capacity on the recycling side. Okay. So what we're summarizing here is where we asked communities, oops, sorry, I skipped a slide. We asked the comparable communities and evaluated their programs to see what type of carts are they offering. So Ankeny, Bettendorf, Cedar Falls, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, Iowa City, Johnson, North Liberty, and Urbandale. And again, we asked a whole host of different questions about their programs, but we wanted to understand what type of cart sizes are they offering for their garbage and for the recycling, and what are their fees, how often do they bill, how do they communicate, how do they educate, how do they swap carts out. So we've got all that data. This slide is going to be summarized on the next slide, trying to say, well, how many percent, the percent of communities that said, okay, our smallest garbage can is going to be this size, or what percent of the communities elected the largest garbage size. So that's what this is this is what this slide is showing. So from left to right, the items on the left are garbage. So you could see that 63% of the evaluated communities said our smallest garbage cart that we're going to offer is the 32 to 35-gallon size. And I've got a typo. If you look at the extra large container, it says 63% is minimum. That should be 63% of the communities indicated this is our largest garbage can. Okay, so I apologize for that. But so really big spread, right? I mean, in the 63% said our smallest is 32, and 63% also said our largest is 96. Then we look at the recycling. It's the same question, trying to understand, well, where are communities at on this spectrum for the different types of cart sizes that they're offering. And we could see that the minimum cart size was around 64 gallons to 96 gallons, so about 38%. So kind of split across there. But the majority of the communities selected 96-gallon as their largest recycling container that they offer. So then that leads into the recommendations that we have, again, based on the data that we've collected from the surveys, from the field observations that the city have done, that we have done, and taking a look at what other communities are offering. Our recommendation is that you establish a base program that if you don't make a selection, you get this size of cart. And the size of cart for garbage, we recommend be a 64 to 68-gallon cart. And again, just referencing that previous slide, that's 90% of your customer base will be serviced on a regular basis by that size, according to the data that's been collected. For the recycling, we also recommend that if you don't respond what type of cart size you would want, you would get a 64 to 68-gallon cart. And again, that is accommodating a super majority of the customers for recycling, and again, giving them additional capacity. Both garbage and recycling customers would have an option of opting into a smaller container. So if they felt like this is way too big for me, I need something smaller, they would have that option to opt in. But they need to notify the city so the proper cart can be delivered. Then as far as yard waste is concerned, not everybody needs a yard waste cart or wants a yard waste cart. So that would not be part of the base service. That would be something that a resident would opt in to say, I want a yard waste cart. And our recommendation here is that the more standardized you can have in your cart sizes, the more flexibility you have across all of your resources, your inventory of these carts. And our recommendation would be that the cart bodies are the same color and the lids are what is used to identify what program it services. So for instance, if I'm done with my yard waste cart, I turn it back into inventory, it can either be reused as a yard waste cart or you change the lid color to another program and give it to somebody else. So we're really trying to build a lot of flexibility and get as much mileage as we can out of those carts. Okay, so those are recommended cart sizes. And then for vendor services associated with the procurement of the cart, there's a lot of carts that are going to need to be delivered. And there's be a mountain of carts probably is the best way to say that. And we want to make sure that they work with city staff to coordinate where those are going to be staged. We would strongly recommend that the vendor be responsible for assembling and delivering the carts. And that would include affixing the right colored lids, the wheels, and branding the cart, whether that's stamped and or stickered. So that'll depend on the education component. But then also work with you to validate the customer database so that we're ensuring that we're delivering the right cart to the right customer. Then as far as the rollout schedule, here's this program chart again. We'll be stepping into cart procurement, moving towards rollout of the services in September. But you can see in April through June, that's when we really get into the weeds of, okay, how are we rolling these carts out? Which route is going to start? What are the dates that these carts are going to be delivered so that we really have it planned out so that we can be as smooth as we can with the delivery of the services. Next steps. So we'd request approval for the major program elements as follows. That staff be directed to seek out procurement for cart sizes of 64 to 68 gallon and 46 to 48 gallon for garbage and recycling. And the 64 to 68 gallon container for yard waste, again, that would be an opt-in program. And then, like I said, we recommend that they be the same body of color. The lid would represent the service. And then as part of that procurement, we would require that the vendor assemble and deliver carts. And then happening simultaneously, actually in the background already, we're working on a grant application to help pay for the carts for the recycling partnership. And depending on a couple different factors, they offer grants from $5 to $15 a cart to help pay for recycling carts. They're not going to pay for yard waste or garbage, but it'll help. And then there's also a component for education money as well. So we'll be working with city staff on that. I went through a lot as fast as I could with covering the highlights. I don't know if Kim, if you have anything else to add. Okay. Any questions?
Questions? Let's go ahead, Randy.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, that was a great presentation. I have just a couple of questions. My first one is, our charges at the landfill, are we charged per ton or are we charged by truck when we offload?
I believe you are charged by ton.
Okay, so my second question is do we have the statistics to tell us? I'm a little concerned with going to a larger receptacle because what we're doing is we're essentially allowing people to add more weight for no more charge because we would no longer have the tag program, or it would be greatly reduced for the purchase of that because we're giving them a larger receptacle, which means in turn our charges go up at the tipping fee at the scales, which eternally creates more increased cost to us. And then we have to go back and calculate our tipping fees across the board. And I would assume that we would have to try to find an average, which would result in an increase to our garbage. Because at that point, we have to kind of find the median price unless we're going to charge. Are we going to charge per? No, that's a neutral question. So if we go by the recommendation, we're saying we're going to give you a bigger container. You no longer have to buy extra tags, which doesn't help offset those that have high consumption of non-recyclable materials. Am I tracking that correctly?
I would say yes, in the sense that, but the recommendation is that the sticker program would still be there. Because there might be an opportunity, there would be an opportunity for someone to have extra waste that they need to set out that's beyond their cart. And so that would be, the devil will be in the details associated with that. With these program changes, I'm changing habit. I'm not changing generation habits. So whatever you're generating today, regardless of the program tomorrow, you're still generating the same amount. So if I'm generating less than 32 gallons, if you give me a 96-gallon cart, I'm not likely to be generating more garbage unless you take away something. If you take away my recycling opportunities, well, then yeah, then whatever I was previously distributing to these other programs is now coming into one thing. So the program isn't, that's the best way I can say it. The program isn't going to change generation. It hopefully changes habit.
Sure. And just as a follow-up question to that, do we have any statistics as to how many tags we're selling over the counter at the retail store level to offset? Because what we're seeing is the average residential customer right now is limited to a 35-gallon container. So that would be our small. And that's holding 2, or if you stuff it, 3 13-gallon bags. As I'm driving through the neighborhoods, I can see these bags out there with these tags. I'm just concerned with increasing our garbage, our tipping fees or our garbage rates on a whole to cover that. And I know we may have to go through an entire year cycle to see that. I'm just a little concerned about making that large container be our recommendation versus maybe taking a look at that medium-sized container. It's still more than what we have, but not jumping to excessive limits where I guess I just don't want to go backwards in the cost at our tipping fees at the scales that we're going to run into a red situation where we're coming back to say, well, we got to raise, we got to substantially raise our rates because now you're right. We're not changing the usage habits, but we are changing the, if I got to go buy that extra tag, I may reconsider either recycling a little bit more or we're collecting appropriately for those that do need to, larger families, we are collecting appropriately for the tags that are being, needed for that. I guess that was kind of my summary to that, but if you have any commentary to that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Well, in the weight that's, the landfill's charging by weight. And so that's going to be consistent. And the model has established what it's going to cost the city to provide these services, which includes the generation rate for each of the households, which includes the carts, which includes the vehicle, which includes the disposal rate. So that's going to be presented to the city. And then the city is going to work to determine, well, what is our charge to the household? So that'll all be factored into that. And you're right. We specifically pulled revenue out of the model so that we said, our concern is what is it costing the city? And so there's a revenue loss from not selling those tickets, fine, but we're wanting to understand what the service cost is and making sure that we're accommodating a super majority of the residents at the base service rate. So those costs associated with those extra waste, if you will be subsidized throughout the community. Everyone will have an opportunity to fill their bin, if you will, because they'll be paying the same rate, which is yet to be determined.
Go ahead.
I had that same question. So thanks, Randy. The other one I had was, and these are questions I've been asked when we've been out. People are paying attention, which is good, to this conversation that we're having. And so when we've been out at public events, some of the questions I have received, I think the one is, we'd already been told that we are going to pick up the recycling bins of those who have them in the community when we get these other ones, correct? So they don't have to worry about returning those or just getting rid of the current recycling bins that they have. Right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And then secondly, though, but then the garbage cans they currently have, that's up to everybody to get rid of, or are we picking those up too?
So it's going to be a similar answer in that the devil will be in the details, which will be the policies and programs being figured out. For the cans, what other communities have done is basically said, okay, if you don't want the can for this month, here's a tag or write something on it that says, take it. And so our recommendation would be that the city collection crew during their normal routes, take that can. And if cans can be recycled, great. If the plastic cans, some of these are probably in non-recyclable material or non-recyclable shape. So the process would be we would want the vendor to deliver their new carts, and then when city crews are coming through to collect garbage, they would also take the can if the resident didn't want the can responsibility anymore.
Okay. And then, on the yard waste piece, so no more brown bags. Like you either get the yard waste container or we're not picking up the brown bags. Is that how this would go forward?
We previously talked that it may not make sense to do just a hard stop, right? So, well, I've got 15 bags left. What am I supposed to do with that, with those? We do want to make sure that the whole reason that majority of the reason that we're moving to automated collection is for safety. There's efficiency, there's long-term benefits to it as well. So we would have the recommendation that the initiative would be to phase those things out as it makes sense. So if I consistently, and that 64-gallon cart isn't enough for me, then we'd have a way for you to get an extra cart. So other communities offer those services. Now there's an additional fee for that cart. Well, what is that? Well, that's what needs to happen behind the scenes to figure out what is that program cost going to look like. So it could be the same for recycling. The largest cart is, let's say it's 64 gallons. Well, I generate a whole bunch of recycling and I need more. So then there could be an additional cart that's given to that or factored into their cost so that they can participate appropriately.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have some-
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think I would like to know cost before making the decision on which cart, because to Randy's point, there's going to be that loss of revenue if you go from 2 bags to 4 bags. Because my habits aren't going to change, but now instead of me having to tag once a month, use a tag, I'm not gonna. And that's gonna be widespread throughout the city. So I think it'd be good to know costs. If there's gonna be a large increase of cost to the consumer or to the residents, or if it's gonna be something that's gonna cost more for the city to cover because that revenue is gone. So I don't know if that was planned to have those numbers prior to making the decision on which sizes, but I think that would be good to know.
Or even just knowing what is the revenue from the tags.
Yeah, because
Right.
I would assume most of that's gonna be gone,
That may,
because I never have,
Maybe
I
like-
mean, yeah.
So our task is to what's it cost the city to perform those services? And I believe city staff is working, I cannot, DA Davidson. They're working with DA Davidson to, understand all the different things that are funded by those activities, all the different programs that require funding to provide those services. And the way to get that funding is through the cost per household per month. So when I say, because I think the model originally, so this is, I don't have a final number for you because we've got new numbers with the carts and new numbers with the vehicle costs. But what we presented in June was a $19.50 per household is what it costs the city to provide recycling, garbage, and yard waste service. What we want to do is break that out to say recycling and garbage, here's that cost per household. And yard waste is a whole separate program, because if you want it, you got to opt into it, but you can't opt out of the recycling and garbage side. So I don't have a cost for you as to what it's going to, what the city is going to charge the resident. I think what we had talked about, and what other communities have done as well, is not have a different rate structure based on the cart size that you have. So the cost is the cost. So if you have a smaller cart than your neighbor, you're paying the same. It's just that you're opting into that smaller cart. That's your choice.
I just would want to add that with the cart, our hope is to really focus on the cart size, what's appropriate based on the data points that we have. What's the appropriate cart sizes? So we have the recommendation that, and then having that option to opt into a smaller cart size. Again, same cost, but for us to do the whole cost, the big picture cost, we need to do the modeling that doesn't only include the cost of the cart, but the cost of the equipment and those types of things too. And taking in consideration, is there loss in the sticker revenue? So for us to complete that modeling, it's important for us to really look at that cart size and determine what is the best fit for the majority of our residents.
I have one more thing to add, if you don't mind. So part of the model is taking a look at all of the different costs and the different assets that are needed to serve up the program. And we had looked at the different cart sizes, from the 32 all the way to the 96 and what those costs would be. And basically asked the question, is there a cost savings to the customer or to the city for choosing a particular cart size? Basically, is cart size something that would financially impact a decision? And when we ran the biggest delta between the carts is about 5 cents per month per household. So the cost spread for these carts, choosing a smaller cart or choosing a larger cart, as far as the cart itself, cost really isn't an issue for the program itself, for like having the resource of the cart. But certainly if there's information on what is the cost for the city to offer these services, like I said, it's around $19.50 is what it was in June. But we're happy to present additional information.
Okay, the mayor asked me to take over here for a moment. Steve, do you have questions?
Just my first comment is that I'm only a 32-gallon user. So if I jump up to the 48-gallon, that means I'm only gonna have to put it out probably every 2 weeks. So it's gonna save me a few trips to the curb because I'm just not gonna fill it up
Okay.
that often, okay? I understand probably why you're going to just 2 sizes and you're eliminating each extreme. I mean, inventory is one aspect of that. So I understand that. I think as you roll this out, I don't know how you're gonna do it, but how you get everybody to opt in, to me, is gonna be very, very critical to make sure they recognize what they have to do, what step they have to do. Otherwise, they're gonna get these much bigger ones that they want. And they're gonna be a household like me and say, hey, I only wanted a 32-gallon. And now you're sending me this 66-gallon gigantic thing that I really don't want. So that leads me to my final comment. You have some verbiage in there talking about some of the cities and their exchange program. You did not mention that, but I think it's absolutely critical that we do have some type of an exchange program, especially in that beginning several months where people are gonna not opt in. Maybe they overlooked it for whatever reason, and they're gonna want the smaller sizes. So in that case, I'll make sure I catch the opt-in option, but just a couple of comments there. I understand your recommendation, but I think there's gonna be a lot of people that'd be satisfied with the 32. I'll probably be satisfied with the 45. It just means I won't fill it up as often.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Did you have something, Ryan?
I'll wait.
Okay, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of these questions are just to confirm understandings. So in the rollout of the new system, which I have to say, this is one of the most visible programs and services the city offers. I mean, every resident touches it every week, so to speak. And so I really appreciate Kim and Jeff and to the total team, the due diligence that's being applied to this. Because I would also say probably the most critical phase is going to be the rollout. Okay, that'll either, make people feel good, or it'll just maybe be an impediment to their acceptance of the program long term. So, okay, enough of that commentary. So my questions confirming, are our tag sales going away? Would they go away under this program? Not in totality. So there would be a mechanism that somebody who needs to set out an extra bag of garbage can do so. And that's being accounted for in our, fleet on the street, handling. It would require the operator to get out of the truck and pick it up and toss it in.
It may, some of the other cities, the comparable cities, they'll have a bag, as long as the bag tag is seen, they can put it on top of their cart. And so
Oh.
they can just cycle it that way.
Okay,
So in talking to crew
All right.
and talking with other cities, they said that works well.
okay, that sounds just great. So on the, yard waste side of things, composting, are we gonna continue to run our, composting drop-off center? Okay, so, those who don't wanna opt in for that because of just whatever they generate or don't generate, they can still take it into the facility,
Correct.
current state. Okay, that is good. I guess, and Jeff, you mentioned something early on about some communities have seen a recycling volume increase just because of this programmatic change. Kind of comment on that again.
You bet. This is, just like you said, this is a huge change. You're gonna have, the eyes of Marion are gonna be on this, and you're gonna have everybody's attention for a short amount of time. And so they're going to, maybe they didn't know they had recycling, or maybe they didn't know that particular item was recycled. And maybe they only had an 18-gallon bin, and now I'm potentially giving them a 60+ gallon container. So I now, instead of filling up that 18-gallon bin and saying, well, it's full, I'm just gonna put the rest of my recyclables that I have in my household into my garbage because I don't know what else to do. You're gonna have additional capacity for them to continue to recycle rather than running out of capacity and having to throw it away. So the other city that we mentioned was Council Bluffs was one where they transitioned from 18-gallon bin to 96-gallon container. And they're collecting every other week, I believe. Their volume that they picked up increased by 95%. And their drop-off recycling programs decreased by 20%. So that shows that people are using the drop-offs less and taking more out of their garbage and putting into the recycling. Meaning, I'm not trying to say they're putting banana peels in the recycling. It's just they're not running out of capacity. And there's some thought to, well, maybe I'm going to start a recycling program at my work that doesn't have one. Since now I've got this extra capacity, I'll collect the paper at work and take it to my bin. I mean, there's something to say for that as well. But so that's, again, so they're not changing their generation habits. They're changing how they manage the material habits.
Okay. Well, you were successful in reading my mind because you gave me the context I was looking for
All right,
on
good.
that. Thank you. All
Yep.
right, thanks.
Yeah. My question is not specifically about cart sizes, and it's probably more into the policies and procedures coming up, but it's relevant just because it's come up this week. So I was curious, I had a resident call, who's had some like special accommodations with pickup. And so she'll put her bag out on her front porch and our crews will go up and get the bag for her. And she said that the public services crew have been nothing but amazing and fantastic so far, but she's had a lot of anxiety and concern about if that would change with this new program. So I was wondering if there's been any discussion about special accommodations for some of our folks in community, whether they're elderly or have disabilities that prevent them from being able to
Yep.
take it to the curb.
There has, and let that customer know that the programs, that's still going to be offered.
Awesome.
Yep.
Easy then. Thank you.
That's right. And it's something, again, you can rest on the shoulders of other communities that have come before to do this, where they've transitioned to automated collection, but they're still accommodating what they can. And so there's a laundry list of good programs to point at.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
But if you're trying to encourage recycling, wouldn't it make sense to have a smaller garbage bin? Like not, a smaller one than the recycling bin? And encourage people to put more in the recycling?
It's a double-edged sword. Yes and no. And the reason that it's no is that when I run out of garbage space, if I still have garbage, where does it go? It's going to go in my recycling cart. So communities across the United States have struggled with this for years since pay-as-you-throw programs were established, that if you decrease the garbage size and give them an opportunity to recycle, again, if they're already generating X amount of garbage and you decrease it, they're
increasing.
likely to put garbage in
But
recycling.
we're still increasing the size of the garbage
Yeah,
bin from
we're
what we
increasing
have
both.
now. But just, I'm saying if the recycling bin is larger than the garbage bin, but
Yes. The hope is that they see that you are offering recycling and participate correctly in that and more because they've got that additional capacity. That's the hope.
those communities that have seen increase in recycling, do you have any sense of what their like recycling rate is? Like the rate that's being landfilled versus recycling?
Like their contamination rate,
The percentage,
I don't, but the program manager
it
has
like
said that he's not seen a
60%
significant.
recycled, or is it 5%, 50% recycled, or? You know, I'm just asking if you happen to know, if they saw, I mean, you said they saw increases, but just a sense of. At one point, we had a goal to be a zero waste community, and that was supposed to be like 80%
I see what
recycled.
you're saying. Yeah, I don't have that number,
Yeah,
but obviously if it was 100 tons and it went up 100%, so now they've got 200 tons, that those aren't the numbers, but
Yeah.
they've seen a night and day difference for the volume of recycling that they've been able to collect.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they were necessarily anticipating that.
anyone else, anything? Thank you for all your work.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Ryan, you have something?
I
Oh,
just- Okay, I wanted to make sure that in preparation for Thursday night, that you feel like you have enough information, or do you need additional information to reaffirm our recommendation for Thursday night on cart sizes?
Go ahead, Randy.
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on going to a medium-sized receptacle versus the large. Because I'm still, if we're doubling the capacity of the receptacle, that means we're doubling up the tonnage weight. So hypothetically, if we're dumping 10 tons of garbage on a daily basis and we go to that large receptacle and we have households that decide to completely fill a 96-gallon container, which may be 3 times the weight, and we are now starting to dump 10.5 tons on a daily basis. Again, that's a hard cost to the city, which at the end of the month or however our billing is, we're going to see escalated fees at the dump. I'm not looking for taking the revenues from the tags to completely offset it. What I'm trying to do is trying to keep us from throwing a blanket across the city and raising our garbage rates up to everybody to become neutral when we may be, it's kind of like water. If my neighbor next door has an irrigation system, but they're not going to charge more for their water for the irrigation, I'm going to pay for that. And I'm going to pay for it through the garbage system this way. I guess I'm just going to solely come out and say I would be in favor of the medium can, which is doubling the capacity of what we have today. And if somebody still has additional garbage, then they can still, buy those tags. That's going to help us still be a little neutral. Now, if there's some data that backs this up that says, yes, we can assure that the residents are not going to see a $7.50 increase to their garbage fees immediately, I would be happy with that, but I don't have enough data to be able to say I can vote that way, because I don't want to see our garbage rates go up for the cost of everybody because of X. So I would be in recommendation of going to the medium. But again, if there's data that backs that up, I would be happy, because when that garbage truck goes to the landfill and is scaled, that's the hard cost to us. So I realize our habits are not changing for usage, but I don't want the entire city to be paying for, the burden of the additional weight that's going there because of the ones that are going above that. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, our 35-gallon cans have a limit of 40 or 45 pounds. Above that, we have to correct that. So again, it runs in the same vein of going to that larger container.
And Jeff, you can feel free to comment after I say what I'm going to say, but just for the record, for the whole council, if your concern is about behavior and rather than throwing something in recycling, I'm now going to throw it in garbage, then I would note that right now we're paying $90 per ton for recycling and $45 for garbage. So if it's all about quantity, and I'm sure that Jeff could talk about that as well, but if it's just about the actual revenue that we're receiving in garbage tag revenue, I just pulled it up with Ryan, it's around 200,000 a year that we would be baking into the rate. And obviously, it's hard to follow that trend right now because we're just coming off quite a few years of derecho where those were increased numbers, but
I would think the data would be able to support that as far as to work these numbers backwards. We know what the cost is per tag. We know it's a tag per bag. If that average bag is 20 to 25 pounds, we should be able to work those numbers backwards to know that the offloading of this garbage at the landfill, will it come back to be cost neutral to go to that 96-pound container, or excuse me, 96-gallon container, but tripling the weight. I'm not worried about the quantity, I'm worried about the weight. It's all about the weight here because that's what the scales are charging us for. So again, our usage isn't gonna change. It's just we're now gonna shift that burden from people not having to buy the tags. They can load those containers up and it's gonna go to the dump and we're gonna get we're gonna get charged for that. I wanna make sure that we're not having to come back during a budget cycle to say, we're gonna take a $5 increase on our garbage across the city because of a select number of residents that have to have this overweight capacity. That's what I'm getting at. I have no quorum against us switching mindsets from going from garbage to more recycling. I'm totally in favor of that. I know people will take advantage of a larger recycling container. I'm just worried about taking advantage of the weight, which is what we're being charged for. That's what
Randy, are you saying then you wouldn't give people the option to opt into a larger can?
I'm just saying those that would have regardless if they go with a large.
But if people have the option to opt into a larger can and they do, then what you're saying is kind of moot, right? Because
No, because what
you'd
we're
end up
doing
with the
now
same
is,
thing where people that want to use a bigger can will get a bigger can and they'll, I mean, so.
so that means we will all share in the cost for those of us that are low garbage users. We will share in the cost of the extra weight going to the landfill.
Go ahead.
What,
Does that make sense?
Randy, I had to soak through, I think, the fundamental concern that you're articulating. And as I've thought about this and as I've looked at the program structure here, here's an assumption that I have. A given household is not going to change the relative generation in pounds per year of garbage or yard waste or recycles for that matter. I think there is a stability to on a community basis, kind of what we expect our community to generate. If I'm filling up over a 2-week period of time, a larger container, and I only set it out once every other week, the incremental cost that I am causing because of that, even though I'm putting more in the container, I'm setting it out less often. So my incremental household impact isn't going to be any different. Same thing on recycle. I think it's less about the electric utility industry is great for this too. Year in and year out, your household uses about the same number of kWh. It was seasonally adjusted. And I think the same analog is true for garbage generation and recycles principally. It just doesn't fundamentally change. There can be variances, but so I think our costing model will reflect that. I won't generate more garbage just because I have a bigger container than what I might otherwise use. I buy 55-gallon heavy industrial 5 mil thick garbage bags, and I only fill those about maybe a quarter full, week in and week out, and the container doesn't make any difference to me. So I understand the concern, but what I'm explaining is the soak cycle I had to do to not worry about container size so much, and does that drive increase refuse or increase recyclable? It just won't, because I'm not changing my household behavior. Anyway, that's just how I parsed it out, because I was kind of fretting about that earlier as well. am I wrong, Jeff? You guys have looked at this.
No, in fact, you said a lot of good things there, of course, and we have all the history of how much tons the city has been taking from the residential program to the landfill over the years. We don't anticipate that changing. So we're building a model to service a majority of the customer base to try and accommodate them with the type of cart size that we feel that they need based on the survey data, based on the observations that the city did to identify how many extra gallons of material are set out on a weekly basis to marry those up to say, okay, this is the size that's going to fit a majority of your customers' needs on a weekly basis. It's not always going to be full. And we don't want to get rid of the tag program. So if they do have if I've got the smallest container and I need an extra bag, there is a capacity to do that. Also, the cost of the program isn't about the cart size. And I know maybe we're focusing too much on the cart size. There's a dedicated cost to going to that customer and picking that up, or just even being able to do that. There's the vehicle cost, the labor cost, and then eventually the cost to take that material to its destination, whether it's the recycling center or the landfill. And that's a cost shared per household. Regardless if I participate in the program or not, I still have to have the vehicle be able to service that. So that's figured into the model. And then based on the data that we've looked at historically for the amount of tons and the volume that people are setting out, and that's establishing the rate for the majority of the customers. And go ahead.
So the emphasis of this whole effort is not about altering the relative volume of garbage or recycling that's generated. It is really focused on just the handling mechanism.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
I won't continue this conversation because I know where Randy's been. I think in my head, I'm trying to solve everybody's problem and every question that has come up to us, and not kind of backing up to just, we'll deal with the exceptions. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, what if somebody throws bricks in the garbage because now they can do the weight, because now they don't have to worry about it because I got a big container. I'm going through all of these, and I think but I just back it up to say, I can't worry about those situations because I think they'll probably happen, but we have great teams that deal with that. Am I accurate in this? And I lived through the transition. I was with an organization when Cedar Rapids went to the Yardies, and people were tripping on them and having problems with going down with this, and the lids were slamming on people. And there was just a lot of frustration, but it was a minimal amount compared to the overall impact in the community. So from our perspective, I think, and from my perspective on Thursday, yes, I'm comfortable with moving forward on that, but also keeping the dialogue open as we are hearing from residents, as is this city team on things that we need to address. But is that what you need to know from me?
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Everyone has what they need for Thursday?
I don't.
Go ahead.
I said earlier that I think I need more numbers on that for what you gave us 200,000. That's great. But exactly what Randy is talking about is that you got one house that does 2 bags a week. You got a house next door that does 4 bags a week consistently. They're buying tags every week. So they're spending, I want to remember what they are, $2.50 a piece. So $5 a week extra. And now they're going to have they're not going to have to do that. So that revenue is gone. That 200,000 is gone.
It'll be built into the program.
Correct. So let's say I'm the one who's only doing 2 garbage bags a week. My rate's going to go up because now this person isn't having to buy tags.
But the cost is gonna go up primarily because we're transitioning to the fleet. It's less about the cart sizes and the tonnage, because the tonnage is gonna stay the same. And I would just offer from an anecdote, when I first got here, I did the rounds with Luke on the garbage, on the garbage truck. And one thing that he had shared with me was that, yes, you have these 32-gallon, 35-gallon garbage containers. And we do have the tag program, but a lot of time people really jam that in. So while those people should be paying for the tags, they're not. And the behavior is to shove it in there. So now what you're actually doing by giving them the receptacle that is more in line with what the generation is, you're actually kind of capturing the cost that has been lost previously that our crews have been able to see throughout their time of doing the service. The tags will still be in existence. But again, the primary cost is the cost to modernize that fleet and going to that automation and paying for the fleet. Because this is an enterprise fund. It is a utility. This operation is meant to capture revenue to offset the operating costs. So I'm not stepping foot into the debate. I mean, this is a great debate and this is a healthy debate and certainly understand the questions. But I want to make sure that we do have folks that are shoving a lot of garbage into those containers and not paying for the tags now. So it is about behavior, and giving a larger receptacle allows them to do that without now skirting the system, if you will. And the model, I was asking Leanne, and I know Kim's got a meeting coming up with Michael Maloney. These are data points that we need in order to come up with those costs. And please correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm sorry. Yeah, so that is, I mean, that's why I asked Jeff, like, what is the typical cost? He said, what is it, 5 cents per
Household.
for the different costs?
That's the delta from largest to small, most expensive to least expensive.
So when we look
at. For the cost of the cart.
Cost of the cart.
Okay.
But then, so Jeff, it's like $19. I can't remember you referenced it earlier. $19.50 is for the automation. That was the cost
To the city.
to the city.
And that's for recycling, garbage, and yard waste. So, and I think the model had assumed that there was about a 40% participation in the yard waste program. So if you all in, the cost to household would be the cost to the city is $19.50 to offer the services up. What the city charges to the customer, that's a different conversation.
Yes, and then just to talk about the timeline just a little bit, because we will be working with the affirmation of what the cart sizes are, then we can then start working with Dave Davison to do the modeling that then kind of addresses the question you have, Randy, and the question Randy, Sarah, and Will, the question, because then we can start working on those numbers and taking in consideration what the opt-in for the medium cart size would be too. So we'll have, before we actually go out for procurement, we'll actually have those numbers before we go out for procurement. But we need to have something to work our model.
So the action on Thursday is direction with one of the cart sizes. So we're not ordering them. We're not seeking to order. We're just seeking what direction so we can continue with that model. So, correct. And then we'll come back to council with those updated costs based on the card sizes directed from council in order to then come back with what the pricing model would be.
Yes.
So you'll have a chance to revisit these card sizes based on that costing model.
Go ahead.
So we will have
Guys.
statistics.
I'm sorry, you guys, we should keep the side conversations down. Please.
So we'll have statistics or numbers of will we have numbers that will have the cost or the tag, the program cost, if it's eliminated, not eliminated, but if it's gonna go down, are we gonna have those types of numbers
Yes,
that can be,
those are all the things
integrated
that we'll
in?
be working through.
do we know like how many extra bags of garbage are picked up every week? Do we know that number? Do we have that statistic?
So they did that for a week. They did those field observations to identify how many tags are set out. And so
Okay.
that's about, and they did it by route day, by route. And so the average is about 9%. And that's kind of on the extreme side,
9%. Okay,
set out more than the allotted 32.
sure.
And so, and I think you got to buy the tags in groups of 6. Is that right? I think
One.
Yeah.
I can go and buy.
And buy
tags.
as many as you, yeah, as
Okay.
few as you want.
Yeah.
So I know my household, the bag program or the tag program probably stopped 3 years ago. I'm still in my junk drawer. I've got 7 tags that are still there. So.
I'll take them.
So sometimes revenue doesn't dictate participation in the program.
right.
It's, sort of like, well, I've got them if I need them.
Well, that eases my mind that we're gonna have all that stuff calculated based off
Yeah,
of what,
'cause once
and then
we
we can
have-
change.
Yep.
if
Once
we
you
decide.
affirm this, then we can then work with the modeling, and that would be that's our next step. Next step in the timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you for the discussion.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Obviously, a very important topic, and I know it's important to the residents, so it's important we get it right. Thank you to everyone for the good conversation. Next, we have Amber with a presentation on the community survey results. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It is my honor to present the 2023 Community Survey results. This is the 4th time we've administered the National Community Survey here in Marion, working with POLCO and the National Research Center. So I want to start by thanking you for investing in this important research, and also thanking our residents for taking the time. This isn't a 5-minute survey by any means, but it does provide us with really valuable data. Since we've done this for four times, we do this every other year, we are gathering some trend data so we can look at where we've been, how we're moving the needle here in Marion. And then we also look at benchmark communities, national communities that also administer this survey, in addition to some custom benchmarks. In your packet, there is the PDF document of the written report. There's also a link to the digital dashboard that is available to further dive into the results. And this will all be posted on our website tomorrow. So the survey, it looks at the livability of our community. It's more than just evaluating government services, looks at private sector, community-based organizations, and the residents and how we all intersect. The methodology behind this survey, the survey was mailed to a random sample of 3,000 households. We received 593 responses in September and October of this year, which when you subtract out those that were returned to sender, a 21% response rate. And then at the end of the survey collection period, we opened it up to all residents who wanted to answer the same questions. And we received 272 responses in that way. So in all, we heard from 865 residents in this process. As you'll recall, we conduct this survey and we do so strategically with the recent election. We then capture the survey data to help inform a refresh of our strategic plan. This information is then helps drive our work plans, budget decisions, and so on. And so we'll be due for a refresh of the strategic plan here in the next few months. Again, just kind of want to touch on random sampling. Every household had the same chance at being selected. And then when the data comes in, it is weighted to reflect our demographic characteristics. So looking at that census data and making sure all facets of the community are represented. We achieved a 95% confidence interval, which means there's a margin of error of no more than plus or minus 4 percentage points for any question. And then I already touched on the national benchmarks, which is a group of up to 500 communities who asked the same types of questions that we did, and then those peer communities. For the last 4 iterations of the survey, we asked for these benchmarks, looking at secondary cities, so not the primary city in a metro area, with a similar population and annual household income. So here's a quick look at the cities that were included among those peer comparators. You'll see Marshalltown, Iowa, Illinois communities, and then others from both coasts. But they kind of hit on the same questions that we've asked, and also fit our community's characteristics. And the other important thing to remember is a survey like this allows us to hear from a broad cross-section of the community, not necessarily those we hear from regularly, but those that might be happy with services or just going about their daily lives, but then have an opportunity to weigh in and share their input in this way. It looks at 10 facets of community, everything from the economy to safety, to the natural environment, to how inclusive and engaging our community is. The other thing it measures is where we're performing in relation to where residents think we should be investing their resources. And it helps affirm some of the initiatives we have underway, and then also kind of helps identify some of those areas of opportunity. Looking at this scatter plot, that lower right-hand corner is generally kind of where we could work to move the needle. In utilities, community design is kind of right on the median line there, but helps us provide that visual to help with future planning. So before I dig into the results, I want to kind of share my key for sharing a lot of information on a small screen. The percentages you see are the percent positive responses. So anytime people answered excellent or good. The top number is the score from 2023, this most recent survey. The bottom from 2021, when we last conducted the survey. 2021, you'll recall, we're kind of right on the end of pandemic. The streetscape project in Uptown was at the halfway point. So there are a lot of things you'll kind of see throughout that may have been positively impacted since then. The color scheme is also one you might pay attention to. Anytime our scores improved by more than 12 percentage points, you'll see it colored in green. More than 6 percentage points is yellow. And then the blue color is if it stayed pretty consistent with our previous survey. Gray is anytime it declined by more than 6 points. So for quality of life, what makes our community attractive, accessible, and welcoming to all? And you'll see our answers are very consistent with past iterations of the survey, but overall an A report card. People gave very high marks to Marion as a place to live and the overall quality of life. And then the next 3 all scored higher than our peer and national benchmarks, recommending Marion as a place to live, intending to stay for the next 5 years, and our overall image also improved. Then we look at governance and how well Marion meets the needs and expectations of residents. Improving by more than, well, actually by 10 points was public information services. And then all other areas, including openness and transparency with the public, the overall direction the city's taking, confidence in city government, all ranked higher than both the peer and national benchmarks. The economy saw quite significant gains. All 4 categories, the variety of business and service establishments, the vibrancy of downtown, employment opportunities, and Marion as a place to live, improved by more than 12 percentage points. But vibrancy of Uptown up 22 points. The economic development and overall economic health also increased over our peer and national benchmarks. So seeing a lot of movement there. Mobility looks at how easy it is to get around the community. Ease of bicycle travel increased significantly, as did ease of transportation using public transportation. ease of bicycle travel, likely related to the Seventh Avenue Streetscape project and many of the trails projects that were completed in the last year or two. Also saw improvements on traffic flow on major streets, ease of public parking, and ease of walking, again, likely tied to those projects. Second part of mobility looks at street repair, sidewalk maintenance, bus and transit services. Those all improved by more than 6 points. And traffic enforcement is one that remained pretty steady, but showed stronger scores than our peer and national benchmarks. An area Marion has always scored relatively low in is the percentage of the population that uses public transportation instead of driving. It gained a couple percentage points, but is still lower than those benchmarks. Community design, again, looking at kind of the refresh of our comprehensive plan coming down the line, the improvements made in Uptown, certainly saw improved scores. Overall layout and design of the residential and commercial areas improved by more than 12 points. And then all others, well-planned residential growth, well-planned commercial growth, overall appearance, improved by more than 6 points. Wanted to point out too the historical preservation of historical and cultural character. I know the former church has been a project of the last couple of years. It's also in our strategic plan, and so just noting the notable movement with that one as well. Utilities, affordability of affordable high-speed internet access and stormwater management both improved by more than 6 points. Drinking water remained consistent from previous, but still lower than those peer and national benchmarks, much of which is related to our water source likely. Safety, the overall feeling of safety, again, consistent for Marion, but much higher than our peer and national benchmarks. Emergency preparedness also improved by more than 12 points, kind of a nod to our efforts in developing the emergency operations plan and continuity of operations plans. People's feeling of safety from natural disasters and also improved scores for fire prevention and education improved nicely. The natural environment, overall quality of the natural environment and Marion open space improved by more than 6 points. Cleanliness is one that's been consistent for Marion, but in comparison to other communities, we stand out in that regard. Water resources, we did improve the score there, but it still rates lower than those peer and national benchmarks. And our recycling satisfaction improved a bit, but it is still lower than the 2019 version of the survey. Parks and Recreation, the quality of opportunities, the programs being offered all saw significant gains. Special attention to the availability of paths and walking trails. And we had the 10th Street side paths come online since the last survey, the trail over Marion Boulevard. So seeing a lot of satisfaction there. And that is higher than our comparison communities too. When we look at health and wellness, both overall health and wellness opportunities and the availability of mental health care improved by more than 6 points, although the mental health care score is still just hitting 50%. Other scores were consistent with previous iterations of the survey, although preventative healthcare services improved over those benchmarks. Education, arts, and culture. K-12 education declined by 6 points, likely part of the national political landscape. A big shout out though to the library, since it came online, achieved a 96% satisfaction rate. So well above our benchmark communities, as are the opportunities for events and festivals and musical activities. Also improving by more than 6 points were the educational opportunities for adults and community support for the arts. Inclusivity and engagement is the final category the survey looks at. Saw a significant improvement in resident connection and engagement with the community, and opportunities to participate in social activities. And I think those are both very strong. Marion as a place to retire, the way we take care of our vulnerable residents, the way we make residents feel welcome, and attracting people from diverse backgrounds, all improved by more than 6 points. Then we ask a handful of custom questions. The first one asking where people get their information. So this is pretty consistent with previous iterations of the survey. The city website remains number one, followed closely by local media outlets and the Marion Messenger. And then you can see the other sources they follow. We asked if residents would support a property tax or fee increase to fund facility or service improvements. Streets and infrastructure improvements always tends to take the top spot, but that's followed closely by public safety, police, fire, and ambulance services, and then several parks initiatives, be it park development, recreation services, trails, and you see the aquatic center and a community center on there as well. We also asked this time around resident opinions on brick streets. So clarifying that it would likely increase the cost of reconstruction. We wanted to know the extent to which people would support the reuse of the original brick. 58% would like to see the reconstructed street in historic neighborhoods. 76% indicated support for a crosswalk-like band in the historic neighborhoods. We also asked about fireworks, noting that we do currently allow private use on 2 days each year. What extent residents would support or oppose. And you see it split pretty evenly, with a little more support for keeping private use than strongly opposing that. So in summary, a few of the key takeaways. Residents continue to enjoy an excellent quality of life and report feeling safe in the community. 95% of residents rated the city as an excellent or good place to live. 9 in 10 are happy with the overall appearance. 8 in 10 gave positive marks to the feeling of safety. In addition, ratings for government performance are strong and above national averages. 9 in 10 residents are pleased with the customer service being provided. 3/4 gave positive reviews to treating residents with respect, being honest, and treating all residents fairly. And 7 in 10 expressed confidence in the general direction and the efforts to be open and transparent with residents. And third, the educational, cultural opportunities and arts are features of the community. 96%, as I mentioned, gave high remarks to the library services. 8 in 10 positively rated the K-12 education system, the opportunity to attend special events, and 7 in 10 said they would be in support of a fee or tax increase to fund schools, an aquatic center, or a community center. So one of the first questions on the survey asked what Marion should focus on in the next couple of years. 92% said the overall quality of utility infrastructure. 89% said overall economic health. And 87% said the overall feeling of safety. So while a lot of these things are things we're doing well, they still remain a high priority for residents. And this is a document you're likely familiar with, our Projects in Motion document, which really shows several of these things are already underway. Looking at infrastructure, the stormwater master plan, looking at safety, the traffic cameras, and then also looking at the economy overall, the collaborative growth initiative, how we're going to increase our workforce, how we're going to address parking. All of these initiatives show up on this document that staff are working closely to accomplish. So I realize I've thrown a lot of information at you in a short amount of time, but just these are some questions to think about as you kind of dig deeper into the results. In terms of what results did you expect? Maybe what did you see that was surprising? Identifying areas where we need to dig deeper, and then looking more futuristically into what we should focus on next. As far as next steps, as I mentioned, I'll be sharing this with the community on website and press release and social media in the coming days. And just really trying to help tell our story of kind of where we're at. So with that, I'll open this up to any comments or questions.
Yeah, I just have to say, looking at these overall results, and I looked at them in quite a bit of detail this weekend. It's to me, it's gratifying to see the reinforcement by our citizens on where the city has been, one, spending its money for its capital improvement programs, that those are being put in areas that the citizens are saying they like, they want us to continue to do some of that. And a lot of the programs that we invest in as far as safety and parks and trails and everything else we're talking about collectively, there weren't too many areas. I was looking for areas to say, where do we need to improve on? And the two, one, you talk about education, we slipped. I think we might understand why that might have happened during 2023. The other one might be when I have discussions with my granddaughter from Cedar Rapids, it's always about water. Cedar Rapids water is always better than Marion. So our rating for water was not that good. What should we do, or could we do to improve upon that? But overall, I tell you what, I was very pleased with these results to get confirmation of what we have been doing is the right packages of stuff to continue to do.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Amber. This is a lot. Did they cross section any of this? Probably additional fee to get way down so that we know what age group is most dissatisfied, who, the pockets of identifying that, is that?
There should be some level of analysis that can happen online through that digital dashboard. The paper report just doesn't have as much flexibility in providing that, but that online link should be able to help in that way.
Okay, because I hope that if we're really taking this, because there's a lot of great things. Kudos, Bill, with the library, and there's a lot of great pieces with this, and I like to see that. And I don't mean to take to the negative, but I want to look at that and say, so how are we addressing that? So I think, one of our biggest economic engines for this community has always been our education. And when you see that dip, I'd like to think that's a one-year anomaly, but I also think that's a lot of what has built Marion to what it is today. And watching that number come down is a question that should be asked. So I'm hoping that we're not only that we're celebrating the great things that are happening, but we do dig a little deeper on how maybe we could be addressing, and that was just one of them, but on the other pieces with, it's interesting when we got to the end and the three things were, what should we work on? It was safety. And I'm thinking, okay, we are, and that's there, but it wasn't economic health. It's kind of general economic health. Okay. We want to, but do people see that as the amenities and the things like this great Friday night we just had and all that goes along with that and utility, infrastructure? That's interesting. That's something we all need, but at the same time, it's not always in our control. So I applaud those that took this, gave us the voice in the community of what people are saying. I think this is a great thing to layer onto the conversations that we are having on a daily basis with our residents, but also celebrate the good. But I would really like to see on those crosscuts within the survey on the areas where we're dipping or dipped or kind of are just hanging even, or that we're looking at who is answering that way, that is responding to it. So, but I thank you for that. I know there's a lot extra goes into it.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. To Councilmember Mentzer's point, we've already started talking as a team of going through, we're in budget cycle right now. So kind of we're focused in on on that. And, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through, kind of do that deep dive. And if you recall, 2 years ago after this came out, we did a retreat where we kind of looked at our strategic plan and just went through those goals and objectives to update accordingly. So we're gonna go through that exercise once we get through the budget process, kind of shift towards that, and then regroup with council and just kind of provide some of those analytics that you've asked for. But then also, do we feel that, are we gonna recommend any changes to strategic plan, or do we need to stop doing a project, or should we start doing a different initiative or whatnot? And then, you mentioned the school district. We did share this with our partners at Linmar and Marion. And it was interesting because when you go back to that slide, while it's down, it's actually up compared to our national. And that was one thing that I pointed out to our partners there, which you kind of think about some of the things that on the national level it's kind of happened around our community, but.
And I don't want to, knee-jerk reaction on any of it,
Right.
one way or the other on it, but it is one of those to say, because I will say this again and again, this community is known for having great schools. And when you're seeing that happen, it is a relevant conversation to dig a little deeper with, or to be putting here as a, watchful eye on not letting that slip again, or course correcting hopefully before the next survey, or what people are saying. And that, like I say, that's one. I know there's others that are part of it. It's all good and it's great results, and I appreciate it. And I also understand it's a section of voices. That's why I was just kind of looking at the crosscuts to figure out what ages, because usually if a lot of people who are filling out the survey may have strong opinions one way or the other when they're identifying these surveys.
Certainly lots of things to dig into and to follow up on. In general, you said this is the fourth time, right? So 8 years. I guess some of us have been here the 8 years and we've seen the trends. And to me, what's most encouraging is to see the improvement of the relationship between the city organization and the community, and the trust and the credibility that is being built with the community, and seeing that increase over time. And that's really huge, that our community is willing to give us the benefit of the doubt. Our customer service orientation has really improved in the last 8 years. We know we have power as a government organization, but how we use that and how we display that to the public matters. And I think we're being much more mindful of that. And you see, and we're very responsive. And that goes from the elected body all the way to throughout the entire organization. Our responsiveness to the concerns and issues that are important to the people that we serve matters. And I really, it's really heartening to see that result and the trends. When you see the trust in government, you see people's satisfaction with the customer service that they're getting. It's just that the only way I can say it is we're building this credibility with our community, and that just is huge to me. And so I just want to thank everybody for being so mindful of that, and that we see the results here. So, but great job. Thank you. That's a great presentation, very well organized, and these are amazing numbers. I can't wait for the state of the city.
It's done for you.
It'd be great to share those numbers. You see, I'm thinking ahead, Amber. Okay, next we have Seth. Fee schedules.
Good evening. So last budget, we made it an initiative to review city fees. And so before we're bringing before you our Parks and Recreation fees, we met with finance and we have some fees that we're looking at updating. These are going to be coming forward at the next council meeting and will be effective January 1st. In your memos, you have the full fee schedule, but I did want to identify some of the ones that are specifically in there. So as part of these reviews, we did look at comparable cities, and then also just inflation costs with products. We did add 5 new pavilions into the rental schedule. They're pavilions that are either brand new or ones that are currently existing that weren't available for rental, and we're bringing those available for people for the public to rent out. For recreation programs, there wasn't a lot of fee changes within the programs, but we just bunched everything together into ranges, really to be more cost recovery effective. Because when we review programs, we review them quarterly, and we don't just set a set fee for these programs. We establish a break-even point and establish whether or not what the cost recovery should be based on if the program's essential, important, or as needed. And then for memorial programs, we made changes based on price increasing for products and then also just the demand. And then one one fee that I did want to just call out would be our non-facility rental and green space. And these are for large gatherings for special events. This goes across the board for things that happen throughout our parks. More specifically, happens at Allow when people are hosting small gathering weddings or renting out City Square Park. We currently charge $150 flat rate. With a lot of the new additions and looking at comparable cities, and just the time spent with on a lot of these products or a lot of these events, we went to a model that's more people and time oriented, along with providing a street closure for 7th Avenue, or a street closure for those rates when we do have street closures. These events, when we do these, when people apply, they do a hold harmless and they reach out to the Parks Department. And so this isn't something people will see on the front end, but more on the back end. We do work with our partners on doing a reduced rate and do have an avenue for reduced rates. We have forms people can request to have that reduction, but we would have a minimum set requirement just to help cover some of the costs of the city. So I will open up the floor for City Council if there's any questions on some of the set fees, questions on any of the ones particularly called out or ones that are in the memo that I did not mention today.
So the street closures, again, is that any particular streets or?
So this would be specifically, we're looking at 7th Avenue. So if someone wanted to host an event in City Square in 7th Avenue or the North Plaza.
So that is possible?
So what we would do is charge a whatever the event is. So if they're doing a 3-hour event for us for a large 600 or more people, we would charge a 300, and if they wanted to charge for closing the street, we would do an additional 150 for that. And that's really just taking in the time for public services, parks, in maintaining all the utilities and in closing the streets and keeping up with trash and things of that nature.
But someone could ask for the closure of 7th Avenue for for a private event?
So it wouldn't be private. So that's
Public event.
yeah, it would be
Okay.
a public event.
More
So
like a chamber
yeah,
event.
yeah, we would go through the whole harmless process, and we typically don't just let people close
Okay,
it for
that's what
private.
that was my question.
So the only thing that it does allow them to do is they can set rules, like if they don't want alcohol or, pets, we've made that into the code. So they do get some of those exclusive rights, but they won't just be able to shut off from the public.
Sure, okay. Questions for Seth? Go ahead.
Seth, just one question. When I was looking at that this weekend, the one area that jumped out at me was the memorials.
Mhm.
And you made a couple of comments about that. So those doubled in price?
So for the benches, yeah, we doubled in price. The benches that we currently get are at 1,000, but then we also have the concrete that we pour for each of those pads, digging them out, put into place, and then the administration cost that we have for them. So we typically always have charged more than what we've purchased the benches for, but now it's just catching up to, and we haven't changed it. I don't think since I've been here. So, and then for the trees, we've been just charging for the trees. We don't
Yeah.
charge for the stakes, for the mulch, the water bags that are all required for that. Or even, we do charge for the plaque, but, none of the other, tools are essential as far as in the first 5 years of that tree.
Okay, so some of this is a little catch up.
Yeah,
Obviously, some of it's pricing like you talked about, some of it is catch up.
yeah.
And when you have a catch up and numbers change that significantly, I think to me, that is kind of a bad reflection
Hmm.
on maybe what should have been happening in past years. So I'd encourage us to be looking at these rates a little more frequently so we don't have
And
this of a significant increase in one year. I mean, you don't have to look at it every year, but
yeah,
look at it more frequently so it covers your cost and
oh, yeah,
you keep up with it so you don't have 100% increase.
yeah.
I mean, that is just a little bit of a shocker to people.
Yep.
Who are maybe thinking about it.
Steve, that's a great point, and it's just, again, highlights the conversation we were having at the budget work session last year and how a lot of our rates hadn't been increased since
Yeah.
2008. So this is, going through each department, getting us all up to
Wow.
the current, and then looking at it on an annual basis.
Yeah, more frequent. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Seth? Okay. Thank you, Seth. Back to Kim,
All right.
snow and ice control operations.
Look at that.
Do we have to?
Favorite diagram.
I know, winter is officially here. With that being said, we really wanted to take some time tonight just to share with you the processes that we go through when there's a snowstorm and or an ice storm. One of the things that we do, we have implemented and put into place with our public service team is we are using the National Weather Service organization. They have a great website that is updated. It's easy. Anyone can take a look at it, but it has a lot of pieces of information that are very valuable to our team when it comes to just when is the snow going to fall? How many inches is it going to fall? When is it going to fall? What's the temperature? What's the wind speed? All of those kind of things. This, as I said, along with the National Weather Service as a resource, this helps us determine vehicle prep, call-in times. When do we call our team in to get them engaged, and communication needs. When we have an accumulation of 1 inch or more of snow is expected or ice creating slick roadways, operations will commence. The designated supervisor will monitor the road conditions and throughout the snow event, along with communications with both fire and PD. We utilize them to, as we watch the prediction, as we follow the National Weather Service, sometimes there are those pockets of temperatures, that adjust really quickly that maybe we're not seeing through any of our other resources. So it's good for us to have that communication with fire and police department as well. Our priority routes, we have 3 major priority routes. One is our emergency snow route, and behind each one of these, when there's more than 1 inch of snow that's going to fall, this then gets us engaged. We call that our emergency snow routes who are our arterial roadways. Priority 2 is our uptown. In our policy document, it's called the Central Business District, along with the alleys that are within 9th Avenue, 13th Street, and 6th Avenue. And then, of course, priority 3 is all residential streets. When there are 2 inches more of snow, then we will plow those roads as well. Other alleys throughout the city are not plowed. Additional priorities, when we're looking at our priority routes, we also look at the streets that are adjacent to fire and police departments, schools, the future emergency departments will be something that we'll take in consideration. Bus routes, high traffic intersections, and residential areas that have steeper hills and curves. The other information I think is important to share is we determine the snow route parking ban, which is 2 inches or more, or winter snow emergency declaration is needed. That is something I just did a little bit of research, and the last time we actually did a snow route parking ban was in 2019, which seems like a long time ago, right? Along with that, we have, these are our 10 different routes that we have. When we have everybody hands on deck, we have 10 trucks, 10, along with our operators. Depending on the event, we could have up to 25 of our public service team out on the street. We always have a mechanic that is available and on site. With these routes, you will see the red line. I know the map is really small, but the red line really shows the uptown area. That's the separation from north to south. We have 7 trucks that travel to the north and 3 that travel to the south. These routes are all based on mileage, road mileage and so we try to even those out the best that we can. One of the other changes that we have made, you may have noticed, maybe not have noticed, is that we have switched our sand and salt mix to a 1-to-1 ratio instead of a 2-to-1 ratio. When I was out driving around, when the guys were removing snow and spreading sand and salt, you could really see the difference in that ratio with more salt, less sand. Trucks are out until all snow has stopped accumulating and all routes are completed. When an operator completes their route, they will assist another. In addition to that, we have smaller plow units that go out and take care of the cul-de-sacs as well. Safety is #1 priority for us. Plows operate at a speed of 15 miles per hour, and the shifts for plowing do not exceed 16 hours. And last but not least, I wanted to take this time to also remind people, do a little snowplow safety reminder to remind all of us to slow down when the guys are out on the streets. Our snowplows make very wide turns. They make frequent stops. They use more than one lane. So if you're going to pass, please pass on the left side and not on the right side, because that's where the snow goes. And then second, a reminder is to give plenty of room. If you find yourself behind a snowplow, please leave 4 to 5 car lengths of space between the snowplow. Marion snowplows spread granular materials that may spray on your vehicles, especially when we're looking at the different mixes that we're using.
Maybe that should be a post on the social media.
Absolutely. We will also, this is information that Amber's adding to our website as well. And just something that all the social media aspects that we have, we can get that shared as well.
Great. Any questions for Kim? Yeah, go ahead.
2 quick ones, Kim. First, we know our equipment is very old.
Yes.
Is it going to make it through another season?
Well, yes. And we also will be having, we do have our snowplow trucks. Those will be coming in, remind me, we've got the end of December, our new snowplows.
Currently Henderson has 7 chassis on site.
Oh,
There's 2 additional ones down at Freightliner right now. So they're just waiting to transport to Henderson. I believe they're gonna start end of December, and hopefully we have them first couple weeks in January.
so you'll be having
For
some
the
of the
first
new
2.
new equipment this winter.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And
they're
the other
moving
question
right
was
along.
on salt.
Yeah.
You just talked about using more salt this winter. And I know the last 2 falls have been challenging to get, for all the cities involved, to get all of the salt from down south
Mhm.
up north
here.
on the Mississippi River because it's been so low.
Mhm.
So do we have an adequate amount of salt?
Yes, we do. We worked really hard to make sure that we had the number, the tonnage that we had requested.
Okay.
So we're doing really well on that. All of that has been delivered. We also are already teed up for next season and have our order in for next winter.
Yeah.
The other thing, I should also make sure that I share that this is our procedures today, what we're doing, we are going to continue to improve on those, continue to improve. Is there times when we just that we just only have salt? Do we take in consideration of using brine? We do have some of that equipment. It's a little bit old, but so these are things that we're going to continue to work through and update along the way. As we sent, I think, 5 or 6 guys today that went to a snow and ice training in the Cedar Falls, Waterloo area. So I'm sure they'll come back with lots of really good information, along with also doing an EOP practice with our city teams as to how do we improve our communications, not only, internally and externally.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is the agenda review for Thursday. First item that's marked for discussion is at the bottom of the second page. Any item prior to that requires discussion? Anybody have questions? Prior to A6 at the bottom of the second page. Okay, A6, Leanne?
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight that this is an item that is a product that came out of the exercise that we did as we were developing the continuing operations and emergency operations plan. And that was the need to identify a successor to the deputy finance director. Amongst her peers, Stacy Vigil, as the accountant for the city of Marion, has the broadest scope of responsibility. And therefore, we are requesting city council authorize her as a signer on the city's financial accounts. So in the case of emergency or continuing operations need, she is able to fulfill those duties.
Questions? That?
This makes perfect sense. I'm glad this is happening. Because otherwise could be dead still in the water getting something authorized. So, excellent.
Okay. No other questions? Okay. Next is A7, Kara, naming policy.
Good evening, council. I have 2 items for you tonight. The first is the resolution approving an updated naming policy. This is part of the ongoing policy review and updates that relate to our strategic goal of efficient and effective government. For the updated policy, the changes that I've made are primarily in 4 different categories. I did update the language to make it more consistent with our other policies. We used to reference the advertising and sponsorship policy in this policy, and I've changed a lot of those provisions. So I wanted to make sure that this kind of followed that and that it would be consistent with our First Amendment requirements. We also, I also made a change that added an exemption for capital campaigns. And the reason for doing so is that frequently for capital campaigns, we do actually have some naming rights associated with those, and council will be able to approve those rules as a project specific set of rules. That way we don't have to necessarily pull this out every time and change the policy. For example, if we have a large donor who's still living, we may want to still consider allowing them to name a building or a other facility. It removes the small plaques and memorials. We already have a specific policy for that. And as you saw this evening, that's already being looked at by the Parks Department for fees. And I've also discussed that, so you can expect to see that policy coming forward again in the next few cycles. And then there's also a provision allowing for council discretion to deny any application. Previously, it just said that you were the final authority, but it didn't necessarily give you any discretion to just deny an application. So I felt that that was something important to add in there. So those are the proposed changes, and we will actually be using this policy over the next couple of cycles as we look toward naming the Caboose Park.
Okay. What's the process for a recommendation coming to council? I'm thinking specifically of an instance where a body that's not the council decided on a recommendation and it just appeared in a resolution. But is there a warning ahead of time that this is coming, or is there a process that we get to be advised that this is being considered before it actually becomes a formal resolution that's on the council agenda? that we know it's being considered?
I would need to take a look at the exact wording in the policy, but there is an application process. And that application then comes to council. I don't know if the policy actually dictates the exact process for that, but that's something that I can
Yeah.
work out with the city.
The
clerk
reason
and
that's
release
important is
numbers.
because, these can be kind of sensitive and, public perception or there's, or the people involved. There are, sensitivities that are involved in that, that we may need to kind of just have a little more coordination before it actually becomes something to be voted on.
Rachel just reminded me that there's an entire
Yeah.
public hearing process, so we would set a public hearing just stating the facility to be named and stating that the application has been made. And then there would be opportunity for presentation and discussion with
Good.
council.
Okay,
ahead of
that's
time.
what I was getting at.
Yep.
Oh, did you have something, Ryan?
I would also, we haven't talked about this internally, but I would imagine that it would follow a process much like we have with the council subcommittee. We use that as an opportunity to make sure that we're providing a heads up on something like that that's coming down. So we can also have that initial review as well.
Okay, any questions? Okay, next item, Kara.
The next item is a resolution approving a Title VI non-discrimination agreement with the Iowa Department of Transportation and the associated Title VI non-discrimination policy statement. This is required by the DOT for all federal grant recipients. So any money we receive from the DOT that comes out of federal funding, which would be a lot of the grants Mike has applied for, and we have received funding. We are required to have not only this agreement in place, but for all federal grant money, there are certain compliance requirements that we have to follow. This one relates only to the requirement that we follow the non-discrimination and ADA laws. So the American with Disabilities Act, just throwing that acronym out there just in case. But for the DOT specifically, the Federal Highway Administration has actually issued an order that all state transportation agencies have to have a compliance program where they will actually come out and audit every city. It's not like for our other grant money that we've received through other agencies where they audit if there's a problem. So in order to be proactive and anticipate a potential audit down the road, we're going ahead and working ahead of the game. So this agreement would have us one step closer to being able to just give them our entire, I guess I'm collecting it in a binder when they come in, and they can go through their checklist and see that we've complied with everything that's necessary. This will essentially just centralize our information. It does designate me as a compliance coordinator because there are so many departments and buildings that will be touched by this agreement and the requirements. It made sense for me to take that on. I will be working closely with Alicia Abernathy on that since she is the Civil Rights Commission staff liaison. And then we will just be centralizing all of our information about our anti-discrimination policies, our trainings, and all of our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives that we've taken over the last few years.
Question? Go ahead.
Kara, I looked through some of the obligations that this puts on us. And, I'd like it the local, the LPA, the local policy agency, I forget what the acronym is. Local public agency, the LPA, and there is on one page, there are a list of 10 items that need to be complied with, and that continues on even then to the next page. Looking at this in aggregate, naming you as the compliance coordinator, do you have the bandwidth to evaluate our compliance profile on each of these requirements? How does this occur? I guess what I'm really, what I fear is, and I've been here, done this and experienced it, that you start with an initial allocation of staffing or effort, and then you go through an audit and you have the real painful experience of then having to augment the staff that is taking care of the compliance issues. And so my question is, do we presently have the resources to make sure that we're going to comply with all of these requirements over time?
We do. We are already complying with most of them. So we went through a sample audit during the training that I attended. And as they went through each thing, I was able to make notes of how we're already complying with most of them. And we're only required to take reasonable efforts on most of them, and we're not required. So for example, we are required to have translator services available, but we don't have to have a translator here at every meeting, which we already have. And so a lot of those things were just me going through this list and talking through with Alicia and Rachel and finding out what we already have in place. And then it'll be reaching out to the department heads to ensure that we have a list of our grant money, what grant it was, what it was received for in place. So it's more about collecting the information than actually having to do a lot at this point in time. We also already have the ADA transition plan for our sidewalks, which is part of this. So we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, just, so is this a manual collection of existing compliance out of each departmental area? Are we just collecting paper, putting it in a binder so that we have it? Or do we have the opportunity, and this is maybe a future action item, do we have the ability to make use of any of our IT data tools in order to, collate all of the information in one spot so it's less of a manual effort?
Yes, I will be putting it into electronic format first. So that will be something that I'll be reaching out as I collect data to department heads, and that would include Terrell, who might be able to point me in the right direction if there's something we don't need to rely on everybody to get back to me. But a lot of it will just simply be putting it into that format, and then I will have the forms and data printed out. So when they come for the audit, I can hand them our binder.
Okay.
And then this also will be taking into consideration what we already have in place, and then also evaluating, is there more that we can or should be doing? And one of the biggest things that we're supposed to look at is who our populations are according to the last census data, and what we're doing to ensure that everything is accessible to those populations.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Okay, thanks, Kara. The remainder of that page is unmarked. Any questions on that, on any item on that page? Otherwise, the next page at the top, F2, Kim.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Our team is excited to be able to have the amendment on council's agenda for Thursday for approval. This amendment really helps provide direction of some questions that we had earlier on with with the original document in moving forward with the Central Plaza project. We kept you up to speed with some of those challenges with the SFR 200 along with the Davis-Bacon rule. They were able to finally come back and say that those are going to be removed. And so this is a very positive amendment that helps us keep moving forward on our project.
Okay, any questions? Straightforward. Thank you. All right, the next item that's marked is F1 at the center of the page. That's Dave and Kim.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yes, this is the development agreement mortgage form promissory note associated with the Bell Tower Lofts project, the former Methodist Church. This is a standard development agreement through the CBDG DR housing program that we're working with. Just laying out the responsibilities of the developer, the city, as partners in this new project. This will be a standard form. It'll be expected with the other projects as they continue to develop and hopefully get to the stage that the Bell Tower Lofts is at.
If there are any questions on this item, I'll have the Mayor Pro Tem handle them.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, since the beginning of this project, I voiced my concern about the parking related to this project. So my question is, if we approve this development agreement, are we still able to make parking an ongoing area of discussion as this project continues to move forward?
Through the zoning that they're gonna be seeking, which will likely be planned unit development, yes, the zoning will be able to still ask and control and contribute to allow for the parking discussion, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I did have just a comment, Kim, about this. I reached out to Kesha. Kesha got connected with me, and I had some picayune questions just about the terms and conditions of all of this, and I just want to just report that she satisfied all my concerns and explained a couple of things. And just, I had some process gaps that needed to be filled in, so that was useful. Okay,
Good job, Kesha.
all right. Anything else on this? Okay, back to the mayor.
Okay, the remainder of the agenda is not marked for discussion. Any questions on anything on the remainder of the agenda? Until we get to the closed session. Okay, we have a closed session tonight. Mr. Harper?
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor. I move to adjourn to closed session regarding real estate transactions as permitted under section 21.51J of the Code of Iowa.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn to closed session regarding real estate transactions as permitted under the Code of Iowa. May we have the legal counsel's statement, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. I've reviewed the proposed subject matter for the closed session and find the same to be appropriate under Iowa Code Section 21.51J.
Any questions before we vote? Okay, roll call, please, Rachel.
Mr. Miskman,
Yes.
Mr. Jensen,
Yes.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mayor Robo Wesley,
Yes?
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Menzer,
Yes.
Mr. Sterned.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. We're now adjourned to closed session.